get us there. To that end, I want to invite all of you and your staff.
Sorry about that, we're legal now.
Okay, we're all being recorded. Thank you. To register for our upcoming Transit Citizen Leadership Academy, or TCLA, it is the last one we will host for the year of 2021. Yes, it is still virtual, so folks do not have to drive to Nashville to attend. They can log on from wherever they are, and it is free to attend. So I highly recommend that you find some folks and register and to take that. It is 6 consecutive Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m. and begins September 1st. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? If not, I'm gonna close our public comments down and we'll move to our action items. And I'm gonna introduce Sean. You ready to take over, Sean?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vogel. So the first item that we have is the adoption of the Unified Planning Work Program for the next 2 federal fiscal years. Since we wrapped up the development of our regional transportation plan in February, we started development on our work program for the next 2 years, which outlines a lot of the planning activities that staff, partners, as well as consultants will be carrying out over the next 2 federal fiscal years. And some of the items that we have, some of the types of work that we'll be engaging in that you're familiar with is a lot of outreach and engagement work, research and data analysis, policy coordination and funding. And some of those upcoming priorities that I mentioned, particularly on the discrete studies, will be completion of our South Corridor study, completion of wrapping up the Interloop, downtown interstate loop work. And then we'll also be kicking off 2 studies, the regional traffic impact study, and then also a next iteration of our freight work of a regional freight study. And so in addition to those, some of the kind of highlights on the policy coordination, which you'll hear a little bit more about under the chair's report, is establishing a project delivery task force to help expedite the delivery of projects in our region, and also reconvening our congestion management task force. On the funding side, which you also hear about today, we'll be issuing we currently have a call for projects through our COVID relief funding, and then we'll be having a call for projects on the horizon for our active transportation program, which identifies and funds a lot of bicycle and pedestrian improvements within the region that you have participated in the past. And then you'll hear from our data team as well as we continue to expand a lot of the data tools and software that's out there to support all efforts, our efforts, as well as help inform local decision-making as well. And so this document has been out for state and federal review. Some of those comments that we have reviewed and addressed contain providing some additional description of the development process for the work program and how we've worked with local, regional, and state partners in that process. Also providing some additional details on some of those anticipated products and anticipated timelines of those planning activities over the next 2 years, and then just detailing some of those thresholds of what triggers an amendment for the work program. And so we had a formal public review and comment period that began at the beginning of the month. The work program was available on our website at www.gnrc.org/UPWP. In addition, there was different ways. There was a comment form as well as a way that members of the public could submit comments at comments@gnrc.org. We have not received any comments to date, and today we are having our formal public hearing, and so we'd be asking for your approval of the work program for federal fiscal years 22 and 2023.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll open it up to the public. Is anyone here on chat or something who'd like to make a comment about what Sean has discussed? this resolution? Okay, hearing none of that, I'll close it down to the public and we'll take a motion from the board. Okay, got a motion. Second. Got a second by Mayor Holt. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Ayes have it, so moved. Thank you, Sean. Before I move on, I'm gonna recognize Congressman Rhodes. Thank you for coming. And, it's good, hey, it's good to see you here. We show you how these little mayors do it. Yeah, and, I'm gonna brag on Ray Renner. I've never seen a field guy do more work and be more visible than he is. Hey, get it in the mail. Thank you.
And Billy, he's a smart Madison High School graduate.
Yeah, he's from Sumner County. Yeah, yeah. It's good to see you, Ray. Good to see you, Congressman. Okay, we'll move to item 4, informational items. Again, I'm gonna go to Sean about the COVID relief funds.
Great, thank you. So the other item that I'm presenting on today is just an update on the CRRSAA, or the COVID Relief Fund. We've had a call for project, and I'll give you an update. Just a reminder, this is about $8.7 million total to our region. There's a larger set of money that has been allocated across the country and to our state, but for our MPO area, it's about $8.7 million, and that's broken down between the Nashville urbanized area and the Murfreesboro urbanized area. And so we had a call for project looking for a variety of project types, mainly those project types that could be delivered in a fairly quick time frame, given that the obligation deadlines were pretty short for this particular funding source. And so those consisted of roadway safety improvements, transportation technology upgrades, sidewalk and pedestrian improvements, as well as ADA-related improvements. And so through our pre-application process, staff screened a number of the applications that we received. In total, we received 27 applications from about 17 different applicants, totaling over $20 million in requests. And so they kind of varied across different project types, but the most common was ADA improvements that we received, followed by public transit projects, and then pedestrian safety or pedestrian improvements. And so based on our initial screening, staff reviewed those pre-applications and notified applicants in advance 20 of those 27 to proceed to the full application for formal consideration. And so through that process, that 20 included about 15 of those 17 applicants, and then about 14 million of that 20 million in total requests. And so two things I want to just note as in terms of next steps through the full application process. One thing I did want to note is that given that we only received one submission from the Murfreesboro UZA, and there's no other competition for those funding sources, and given that there is a tighter obligation deadline of December, the end of December 2022 for that funding allocated to that UZA, we are recommending the project submitted by Murfreesboro for its ITS project be incorporated into this upcoming TIP development cycle, or sorry, TIP amendment cycle, just so that they can continue to move forward and save them a couple of months, given that they are operating under a short time frame. We appreciate it. And then the next item, I just wanted to mention kind of the components that are in the full application and how they differ from the pre-application. So there is some overlap where we're kind of looking for some additional information on just the background project description. We will be asking some specific questions in the formal application to get a better sense of the details of the schedule, so better understanding the milestones and at what point those will be completed or anticipated to be completed in order to meet these tight deadlines. And then looking for any potential strategies or actions that the proponent is taking to help expedite the process, either through project development or right-of-way or construction. And then On the budget side, just looking for a further breakdown of the budget by phase of work, whether it's NEPA, design, right-of-way, or construction. And that full application process is available on our website. We've notified the applicants that are advancing to the full application, and we've started to, those applications are starting to trickle in, and those applicants have until August 27th, I believe. And so then we'll be reviewing those and evaluating those applications before announcing awards in the middle of September. And then those awards would then be incorporated into the next TIP amendment process that will conclude in December of this year. So we don't have any formal recommendations, but we wanted to give you an update on where we are with that call for projects.
Okay, any questions from the board for Sean?
We did include it with the TIP amendment package that Anna is going to discuss next.
Thank you, good question. Any more? Okay, thank you, Sean. We'll move to proposed amendments. I'd like to introduce Anna, GNRC Principal Transportation Planner.
Thank you, Mayor Vogel. I was going to go up to the podium to speak, but I think since our microphones are here on the table for our virtual attendees, I'll just remain here at my seat. Daniel's going to help me flip through the amendments on our TIP amendment tracking and mapping application that some of our data team staff developed for us. We have 12 amendments on the current slate of proposed amendments. This is the final slate of amendments for fiscal year 2021. We'll start, if you're ready, Daniel, with a project in Hendersonville. This is for their Main Street Sidewalk Improvements project. They received a multimodal access grant from TDOT for this project, so the request is to add the project to the TIP. Following that is a request from Smyrna for their Lowry Street Multimodal Improvements Project, Phase 3. They also received a TDOT Multimodal Access Grant, and the request is to add the project to the TIP. And we have a request from Gallatin for their Ball State Gap Trail Phase 1 project. Also another TDOT Multimodal Access Grant recipient with a request to add the project to the TIP. Then after that, we have a request from Metro Nashville for their Downtown Neighborhood Traffic Study project. This is an effort that's a partnership between Metro, NDOT, I should get used to saying, WeGo, and the Nashville Downtown Partnership. The request is to add the project to the TIP with FTA 5307 funds, some local funds, and they also received an urban transportation planning grant from TDOT. Following that is a request from Hendersonville for their Rockland Road widening and extension project. This is an existing project that was already in the TIP. They're adding the extension component of the project, which was included in our long-range plan, but wasn't detailed on the current TIP page description. Also, of course, modifying the project scope to include that. The funding on the project is not changing. We have a request from CDOT for the South Mount Juliet Road widening. This is from Central Pike to near Providence Way. Previously in the TIP, the termini was listed as Providence Parkway, so we're correcting that in both the project name and the project description. We are also adding CDOT STBG funding to this project for right-of-way. And then after that, we have 3 requests from TDOT involving the I-40 SmartWay effort. All 3 of these are linked together. The original TIP page was for the Nashville area I-40 SmartWay expansion project. This TIP page was used to do PE funding for the project. Following that, for implementation of the project, they're splitting the project into 2 different phases, which will be on separate pages. So the next 2 requests are adding projects to the TIP for 2 different sections. I-840 to near US 70 South, and the second being, from near Earhart Road to near US 70. Of course, these are requests to add the project to the TIP along with associated NHPP funding for construction of the project. And then finally, we have that request from Murfreesboro, for the Memorial Boulevard Traffic Signal Improvement Project. Sean was mentioning just a minute ago about, their receipt of COVID relief funding, that was designated for the Murfreesboro UVA. So this is the addition of that project to the TIP, where Murfreesboro will utilize that funding that they received. Thank you, Daniel. Does anybody have any questions about any of the proposed amendments?
Any questions for Anna? Thank you, Anna. Good job, good job. We'll move to item C.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a question.
Okay, Mayor Rogers Anderson.
Anna, is there any thought at all about any of these, it's not just these projects, but in general, about how we're dealing with the future of 5G? I know that's an awful cut, but at some point, they're gonna come back in and want to do 5G, and a lot of these, are we laying the lines, conduit, or anything that we can get in there without having to have these intersections all up again?
Yeah, it's a good question. Might be one better suited for the local jurisdictions to answer that have the proposed project. Not sure if anybody wants to speak to that or if CDOT has had any thought on that issue.
Well, I don't know if I'll be able to speak on operations behalf, but we have, been looking into that technology for doing the extension type project. So, if there is an opportunity to maybe present to this board on the future of that, make that happen, potentially give you some, assurance that everything will get, but, again, I can't, speak on all of it.
They had,
In documents from National, we are routinely looking at all of our design plans, things that have already gone to bid, and we are including, specifications now to preserve that opportunity so that we can minimize the cost of the later fiber or whatever the technology may be. We're going ahead and preserving the price for it within the design, the right of way limit is part of our right of way management program.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that either Sean or Michael or Anna look at that and come up with some policy that all of us could use, as we go down the road working with TDOT, because it's gonna be here, it's just a matter of when, and whether it's fiber or cable, but we're already having trouble with telecommunications in a lot of our areas. It just seems to me to make good sense in planning if we could do that. That's just my 2 cents for what it's worth.
Mark, are you, Sean, writing this? Thank you, Mayor. That's a good question. You're always thinking ahead. A lot of wisdom sitting across there. Yeah, thank you. That's good. And thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go to item C, overview of the data tools and software, and I'll introduce
Mr.
Matt.
Chairman, I saw Matt raise his
Well,
hand again.
Matt?
I was just gonna mention that, as you probably have heard in the transportation bill that's going through Congress right now, there's heavy emphasis on broadband. So this will not be the end of this.
Well, and that's kind of part of it. A lot of us live in the rural parts of the county where broadband is a real problem. And so we're taking some of this rescue fund money and looking at how we're gonna implement. Sorry, Mayor, hearing this again. But we're trying to figure out how to implement some of those things. They look at it like they did during Eisenhower's time. They ran a network of highways, which was for the military, and then branch off from that. And it seems to me if we can incorporate some of this as we go down the road, it'll make our life a lot easier, probably cheaper for us.
Yeah, I agree. Again, traffic operations division is, they place a lot of emphasis on the electric vehicles, the automated technology. So this has always been at their forefront of discussion. So again, I can discuss with them and see if there's an opportunity to maybe provide for education on what we're doing on the TDOT side, and how we can incorporate that into both the urban and the rural areas.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, pass that on down the channels, okay? Up the river. Okay. I'm going to introduce, for information, overview on data tools, Max Baker, GNRC's Director of Research.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody in the flesh, finally. I did want to mention while we were discussing the 5G, that we do have a document, the ITS architecture, that actually looks at integrating technology into transportation and mobility. So that's something that, Aaron, I think we can definitely try and weave into recommendations. So we'll definitely be taking a look at that. So today, I wanted to go over a couple of the research tools that we've been working on over the last year. We presented a couple times to you some of the web applications that we used during the development of the regional transportation plan. I just wanted to revisit those, make sure that you're aware that they exist, make sure that they're serving you well, make sure that your staff is aware and that they get to use them. And, really the intent of it is to make sure that you guys are armed to respond to any kind of public comment or concern. Make sure that you can get any of the pre-NEPA information out of the way. You're aware of any environmental concerns that might be out there. And also just to understand the populations that you're serving better than you already do. If there's certain vulnerable populations or language barriers that might be apparent that you're at least aware of. And with that, there we go. I will switch over and let our data team kind of talk through exactly how you might use one of our applications, and then we'll send you a couple of links so that you can go on and further explore in greater detail. But I wanted to turn over to Carson Cooper.
Hi there, I'm Carson Cooper, I'm the senior planner at GNRC. So the really great thing about this application is it's got different sections. So this first tab is really like high level, and it provides you this about information. So it'll tell you what each subsequent tab says, and it will kind of tell you how that was developed. So, for example, environmentally sensitive areas is kind of a composite layer that we developed with our environmental roundtable kind of technical committee. And so their feedback kind of fed into what those areas go into. So you can actually go over to like a specific tab if you want more details than just the high level information, and see how environmental impacts are lining up with the transportation project in your jurisdiction. And, those environmental areas, they include floodplains or endangered species and kind of your standard NEPA level, just so you can begin assessing it and then recommend areas for further study. And similarly, we have one that goes into the depths of demographics, like Max said, and this is the same criteria we use to evaluate projects for the long-range plan. So it's very familiar information. I just wanted to know that this is available. All of your staff with the TCC also have these links and applications, and they also are planning on using them in the future. But if you ever receive a question or want to take a second look at something, this is here for you as a resource, and it's as detailed as you want. And I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley Glasgow, formerly Ashley Reed. As Carson mentioned, each one of these tabs is a different section, and so it will allow you to answer questions that the public may have regarding, for this example, a transportation project, or questions that you and or your staff may have. We do have a tab that lets you see future population and employment density, so you can see how a project may interact with the future population or employment. We also have information on future daily traffic congestion, so you can identify areas of high congestion. And we also have information on high crash areas, so those areas that have experienced the most crashes in the last 5 years, to help you identify those areas as well. And then go back to PowerPoint. And then each of those categories has applications behind them that have a insane level of detail. Like, I mean, every layer that you can imagine or think of, or different ways that you'd want to look at congestion, or different ways that you would want to look at environmental files. Maybe you want to look at different variables individually. So we do have applications behind these bigger ones that have a, finer tuned level of detail. We also have online dashboards, and this one's just an example. This one was developed to keep track of our crashes month to date. This is to allow us to compare how we're doing compared to our safety performance targets that we set earlier in the year. And just as an example, we can see that fatalities are up to about 128 months to date. And if we stay on that track, we're looking to exceed our target this year. With that, I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thank you. And I just want to also mention, as far as all of the online mapping tools, I want to pat all of your GIS staffs on the back. We wouldn't be able to put them together unless they were the ones that were supplying the bulk of the information that goes into that. So I do appreciate the hard work that you've done to get that to us. Finally, just want to show one last dashboard. This is one combining together several different data sources. One is the NRICS, which we've shown you a couple times, and the other data source is street light. That's not information that comes from the street light that is illuminating the roadway, but actually a company called Street Light. And they've been providing us with vehicle miles traveled per month, or what the demand on the roadway is per month. And that is put in comparison with congestion. And so we've looked at congestion over the day compared to the volume by month, and have seen some pretty interesting findings. What we've been able to observe is that after about February of this year, volumes increased a lot. I don't think that's anything that's surprising to anybody. I think everybody noticed that the volumes were getting back up, but they were actually getting back up to levels that we were experiencing in 2019. I don't think anybody experienced the same level of congestion that they were experiencing in 2019, and the reason for that is that people's behavior changed. They were actually smoothing out those AM and PM rushes and spreading out their trips throughout the day. So it's really interesting information. If you have time to dig into it, I think it's a great case study for promoting travel demand management, looking at staggered work hours or telecommuting and the effect that it has on maximizing the capacity of our roadways. So, appreciate it. And with that, if you guys have any questions or suggestions or anything that we can be doing to serve you guys better, we'd love to know.
I'm not a data geek or a computer geek, but I really enjoy when Max presents and his team presents a lot of this information as we dig into issues, better understand the transportation network and what we need to be doing. So I applaud you, and I think this is a noticeable continued upgrade of the capabilities of GNRC and Transportation Policy Board. Thanks a lot for your team, Max.
Good comment. Anyone else?
Just
Mayor?
a comment, Mr. Chairman, along with what Ken was saying. 2045 is a long way out there. Most of us won't be sitting here. But the one element that I see that is missing in everything we do here on these long-range planning is I know that John is very adept to this. What is it doing in the form of agricultural and rural land? You're talking 25 years out, and the cities continue to grow and annex. There's lots of rural areas that we never look at until it's right up on us, and the neighbors are screaming, we don't want this way. I don't know anything about how to do a local application of software, but I do know that most everyone in this room still has a great love for rural and agricultural properties, and we never deal with that here. And I would just ask that some way, maybe there's a program out there that we at least take that into consideration.
Yes, Mayor Anderson, I'm really glad to hear you say that. One of the products that we're currently working on is satellite imagery. So they've been taking pictures of the Earth since the 70s on a fairly recent or a fairly periodic basis, and we are classifying parts of land that are around 10 acres as being tree canopy, farmland, open pasture, so not farmland, not, canopy, but like what a horse field would be, impervious surface, and water. So we're tracking over time the loss of certain types such as cropland or tree canopy and the increase in impervious surface.
My comment back to you on that, start at 15 acres, which is where the green belt's at. Because anybody 14 and under is not concerned about that as much as someone 15 and over.
Right, I'm just saying that's the reporting time. So we
But the 10 acre, my point is, we're going to put it in weeds again. People with 10 acres and under don't have the same philosophy as someone at 15 acres and above. They've got the 15 acres for a reason. It's the agreement.
And I'm happy to hop in here. So as part of the broader GNRC context, Mayor Anderson, and you just met Carson Cooper. She's she's recently went from the research team over to the planning team. She's going to be leading our environmental quality planning efforts, and she works directly with an environmental roundtable that contains representatives from local jurisdictions and the state resource agencies, federal resource agencies, as well as area nonprofits who are collectively curious and interested in making sure we're preserving a lot of the open space and prime agricultural opportunities across Middle Tennessee. And the only way to do that is to be proactive, because you're right. If you don't have policies and incentives in place to protect that land that the community wants to see preserved for either ag business purposes or just, an opportunity to live in a region that has open space and rural character, it'll be lost forever. So let us bring you some more information to the GNRC executive board meetings that follow the Transportation Policy Board and tie together the issue of transportation, which is driving a lot of the development. That infrastructure is driving a lot of the development out there, and what we can be doing as a region to work together collectively on policies and incentive programs to try to protect some of that land. There's a lot going on below the radar, at least in terms of the Transportation Policy Board, that I think we can bring to light for you in the next couple of meetings. Thank you for the question.
Mayor, that's a good question. Even at my industrial board meeting this week, one of the industrial board members was fussing about the 5 acre tracts. He said, I can't even turn my combine around on 5 acres. I think an answer could be if we could get some incentives for more land trust. People might want to do that where the land can be sold, but it can never be developed. I've looked into that myself, because it's disappearing. You can't tell people, they can't sell their land. And a lot of the farmers, that's their 401k. But still, it's getting to be a problem. Agriculture is leaving us fast.
Chairman.
Yes.
Comment, I think Mayor Anderson's right. I think, I know you have a farm, I have a farm. There's no incentive. If you live, I'm going to say we're a first-tier county. You got Davidson County, and then the counties around Davidson County, and then second-tier counties. It's getting to the point that agriculture is only viable in second-tier counties because the land prices have gone so extremely high now. There's no incentive to farm. So the next generation, and we see this in Sumner County, and I'm sure it's that way in the surrounding counties, the next generation sells a farm. It's worth so much money, they can live a great life and not have to get out there and repair fences and work on tractors and fool with cows getting out or other equipment. And it's gotten expensive to farm too. If we can't find a way to incentivize, not just put in a land trust, because that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be used in any other efficient way, especially for agriculture, then you can forget about green space in our counties unless it's publicly owned. And it's sad, and it's going to affect the character of this whole region. So, and I don't know what you do about it, but there's got to be real incentives for people to keep the land, because I don't know how much money you make off farming, Billy, but I don't make a whole lot.
I wouldn't be sitting here. Okay. Mayor, you done?
Yes, sir, sorry.
Okay. Rogers Anderson, you can bring up a lot of stuff, you know. We could sit here all day and not solve that problem, but it is a major problem. You know, I hear it every day in my county, what are you doing to stop this? And, I can't build a wall around my county. They're coming and I tell them you can't, I've had a farmer the other day, years ago, said, I'll never sell my farm development. And the guy drove up and offered him $50,000-$60,000 an acre and he couldn't sign the papers fast enough. So, it is a problem, but, we're gonna have some initiative to do some incentives to
I
have.
don't think all the battles are related to footsteps of Matt and
Yeah.
Mike. I think a lot of us are gonna have to take those positions at the local level, like Anna does, who used to working with the county until she was stole from up here. And Rutherford County and places that, it took us 2.5 years, and if I can just editorialize a little bit here, Billy. It took us 2.5 years to get a program to the county commission for approval, which they passed 22-2, that all land outside the urban, outside the cities, Breckwood and Franklin, our 6 cities, all that unincorporated land was going from 1 acre to 5 acre tracts. That passed. Now, it was a major battle, and the people we were using as consultants said the 5 acre lot will become the same price as 1 acre times 5.
Yeah.
And guess what? In the month of March of this year, we had the largest number of building permits, residential permits, we've ever had in the history of Williamson County, and they're all on 5 acre tracts. So whatever you set the standard at, after you get to the arguments, and of course, I'm glad to see John sitting here, because they never have any arguments in Washington. And once you get past that, your rural area is now being focused on in our county, and the cities are supporting that, because they can still grow, Brentwood and Franklin and all these areas. But these large tracts of land, and you have the back door, you have to give some incentives for people like you and Anthony that own farms and stay there. You want your children to come back, maybe cut some taxes, maybe look at some incentives in that area. I agree with that. But unless we give those directions, they are gonna move outside the middle of this year. And we'll have a bustling economy here, but we'll be right on top of each other. That's my
Yeah, but you know, Rogers, when you talk about 5 acre tracts, and I know aesthetically it's gonna look different than 1 acre tracts or half acre tracts, but agricultural wise, it's useless too.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole point, you know, working farms where people actually produce food and, raise livestock, I think is important to the character of the region. And I think it's worth protecting, I really do.
The thing I like about the 5 acre deal is, I know if you build a house on 1 acre, and that house stands there 60, 70, 100 years, that 1 acre is not gonna hold the sewage that comes out of that house. Eventually, they're gonna run out of ground around that acre. And if it's not for their friends around them to give them an easement or something, then they're in serious trouble. Out in rural areas where sewer may not never reach. There's a lot of areas like that. I live on a 3-inch water line. There'll never be sewer out there. There's not the water capacity needs support. And, hey, I thank God every day for my 3-inch water line. But anyway, that's a good question, and, probably something we all need to get together on one day and chew the fat about, okay? Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else? All right. Roger, you made me lose my place. Hey, okay, I want to thank Max and Carson and Ashley for their job they do for the GNRC. Appreciate that. Okay, we're gonna move to regular reports, and, is it Pam or Elizabeth on our federal report, Sean?
Mayor, it's Pam.
Okay.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I apologize for not being there in person. I was, I was planning on being there in person, and I have managed to catch a head cold. that is, I did not want to share with y'all today. So
Thank you.
I will, so I plan on being there next month, barring another head cold, but it's for sure a head cold, I promise. But I did not want to share my germs with y'all today. But I am sorry that I'm not with you in person. One of the kind of the big message that I wanted to share with y'all, excuse me, is the Senate has passed a bill for transportation, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It was passed on August 10th. I'm sure everyone is paying close attention to that. I know we are paying close attention to that. The bill now goes to the House of Representatives for their debate and discussion. Hopefully, it will pass into the House and then go to the president for signature. If there is a difference, then that bill will go into conference. They will compromise, hopefully compromise, and then it will go to the president. We're hoping that all of that happens before September 30th. Excuse me, because that is when the FAST Act expires. If that occurs, we will likely end up in a continuing resolution situation, which we're familiar with. It's a difficult situation. Hopefully that will not happen. But as we learn more about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, we will be sharing it with everyone as soon as we hear. And that's all I wanted to share. And again, my apologies for not being there in person. Hopefully next month.
Okay, Pam, thank you for reporting. Get well, take care of yourself.
Yes, sir. Who gets a cold during COVID? Y'all should have seen when I went into the Kroger to try to get cold medicine, everybody looked at me like I was Typhoid Mary. I was like, it's just a cold. And I did have a test, so I know that, but it's unusual during this time, but I appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, yeah, get well. While you're talking, I know people putting their mask back on in here. Hey, so get well, we'll see you next month.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're ready for T-Dot report. Matt, you ready to take off?
Yes, sir. So I have 3 items that I wanted to talk about today. The first one is an update on our long-range transportation plan. We are in the process of developing a scope that incorporated a lot of the external outreach that we did to try to get a better connection about what our plan can do for you all. So we're in the process right now of interviewing some peer states, about 12 of them, based on some of the best practices that they've provided. So I will at some point provide you with more information on the overall scope of what we do. We're actually waiting on census information to come out before we really go into the full-blown update. But stay tuned on that. CMAQ update, we have completed our evaluations on Friday, so now we are in the process of getting the committee back together and to discuss the scores and also look at ways that we might be able to potentially coordinate with some of the applications to help cut costs and not make based on that. Again, I'll keep you updated on that as we get closer to the announcement and the awards for this cycle. The last thing I wanted to mention was maybe something that does have some relative involvement in the Middle Tennessee area, but yesterday there was a Federal Register announcement that discussed the removal of the emission testing in Middle Tennessee and Hamilton County. The one question or the one thing that I wanted to announce here, actually Davidson County would like to stay, keep their emission testing program going, but I wanted to just make everybody aware that this does not affect our CMAQ funds in any way, shape, or form, but it does eliminate that emissions testing annual requirement that most of these counties in Middle Tennessee have. And that's really all I have today.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Okay, moving right along, it's time for the chair's report. It gives me great pleasure, yeah. As many of you remember, last month I appointed Mayor Reed, Mayor Smyrna. She was the past chair, and we appreciate all the work she's done, and she's going ahead at task force to track the progress of transportation projects being implemented and funded and made available through our Regional Transportation Improvement Program. This morning, I'd like to ask Mayor Reed to announce the task force members and say a few words about what we should expect.
Good morning. I want to talk a little bit about our objectives for the task force. We just want to make sure that we're obligating and spending our federal funds we want to make sure that we're tracking all of our projects that are in the tip and identify any of those that are falling behind or getting off track, and let's figure out what's causing that and see if we can get those back on track. I'm also hoping this task force might be able to, work with our other partners to figure out ways to streamline some things and make things a little bit faster. I know a lot of the jurisdictions, sometimes it gets a little bit frustrating with, the amount of time it takes for projects to move through. So I'm really excited about this task force. We will meet on a quarterly basis, and we will bring back information to this board that we all think that is important for us to know. So it's just for us to dig a little bit deeper into those projects. Our first meeting is going to be mid to end of September, just a get-together meeting, talk about our goals and objectives, and our first really dig into the meat of our committee is going to be in October. And, Michael, do we have, or, Sean, do we have a thing for whoever? There we go. Serving on the committee will be myself, Mike Callis from Portland, Randall Hutto from Wilson County, Ken Moore from Franklin, Derek Adams from Nolensville, Gerald Herman from White House, Lynn Harper, who is the current TCC chair from Columbia, Andy Barlow is the vice chair from Mount Juliet, Josh Sevis from Sumner County, Jonathan Martinson from Franklin, Jim Kerr from Murfreesboro, Faye DeMontimo from Nashville, Steve Bland from Transit, and Preston Elliott from TDOT. So we feel like we've got a really good, diverse group, and I'm looking forward to working with this committee.
Thank you, Mayor Reed. Thank you for everyone that's serving on that task force. This is going to help people like me understand when things is going on, because, you know, I listen to wisdom, and there's a lot of wisdom on that committee. It's going to help get us all where if the public needs to know something, we're going to know why and when. And Mayor Reed, I want to thank you for the time you spent on helping this board here. You're very knowledgeable, and I mean, everybody here knows that you're going to hit the ground running on this task force. Thank you. Okay, the prior meeting, I appointed Mayor Rick Bell, 11, to reach out to members to gauge interest in studying the Amtrak proposal that we heard about at a March 17th meeting. Mayor Bell has worked with GNRC staff to conduct a poll of membership and regional partners to learn how you want to be involved in this effort. Mayor Bell is not with us today. Sean is going to take the torch and be Mayor Bell for a little while. Okay, Sean.
Thank you. I'll just go over some of the initial results of the survey. I think we've had pretty good responses so far, but we'll continue to leave that survey open. So just highlighting a couple of the responses that we received to give you a sense of how many people have ridden Amtrak and their interest in pursuing this initiative. So on the first question, have you ever ridden Amtrak? It's about half and half. Almost half the folks have ridden Amtrak at some point in time, whether in the last 5 years or more than 5 years ago. And then on the next one, how interested are you in seeing mayors in this region work together to evaluate options to bring Amtrak to this region? There is interest. About more than 3/4 were very interested, and the remaining folks were somewhat interested, and so that's good to see. On the next question, how supportive are you in Amtrak service returning to the region? Similar results. There was about 2/3 were very supportive, and nearly 30% were somewhat supportive, and only the remaining 8% were neutral on that question. And then in terms of, you know, in what ways are you interested in being involved? So we allowed respondents to check a number of boxes here, but the most common response to that was through surveys and interviews, followed by informational sessions, and then convening a formal task force on this issue, and then lastly, just updates at regular Transportation Policy Board meetings. And so we'll continue to keep that survey open if you haven't had a chance to take it yet. The other thing that I wanted to mention, as Pam had mentioned, the Senate Infrastructure Bill, we're continuing to review and track that, and hopefully that progresses over the coming months, and we'll be able to bring to you guys updates on that and how it impacts the transportation program in our region. I'll turn it over now to Anna to just give you a quick reminder on our TIP project tracking.
Thanks, Sean. The last few pages of your agenda packet contain a spreadsheet that may or may not look familiar to you, depending on how long you've been with us, but this is a tool that we use to track project status and progress, mostly for projects that have sub-allocated NPO funding on them, or funding that the NPO or GNRC has discretion over when we award it to you and you use to do your locally managed projects with. So as you can see, various types of project information listed here, including the funding that's currently programmed to each of these projects. In the full version of this Excel sheet, we also have some additional columns that have the opportunity for local comment on these project status, as well as NPO and TDOT commentary on these projects. I just want to make you all aware that at our TCC meeting with your planners and engineers a couple of weeks ago, we asked that they provide us with updates on their agency's projects. So maybe if you think about it, check in with them to see whether or not they've submitted an update to us. We've heard from a few, but definitely not from everybody. This is a tool that we'll definitely use to inform our work with the Project Delivery Task Force. This helps us keep a handle on the types of funding that we're interested in making sure that we are expending in a timely manner. I'll also just mention on the back of this spreadsheet, there's a couple pages that detail the various adjustments or administrative modifications, as well as amendments that have been performed on projects in our TIP so far this fiscal year. That information is also contained in our TIP project tracker, so you can view it there, but just wanted to give a holistic view of the various things that are going on with these projects. TDOT projects are also contained in this adjustments and amendments list that might be interested to check out what's going on the state managed projects that are taking place in your jurisdiction.
Thank you, Anna. I think the last reminder is just to.
Matt, is that something y'all are gonna be able to help us update with y'all's projects on that list for our community? Okay. I mean, that would be. Okay.
Just the last reminder is to stick around for the GNRC Executive Board meeting that will follow this meeting, and that's all we have under the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Thank you, Sean. Any business to come before we adjourn? Mayor Moore.
I'd like to bring something up for a point of discussion and maybe some investigation for the staff. I know the city mayor, we're very, very focused on transportation, and that's certainly the number one concern of our citizens on surveys that we do. And, you know, I'm a regular attendee of these meetings, and oftentimes I feel like I'm leaving this meeting with not completely understanding everything that's been presented. And sometimes I feel like we've tried to cram 2 hours of information into a short period of time. Also, I think that the point I'm trying to make is that I want us to explore or consider some other options as far as meeting times, meeting days for the Transportation Policy Board. I see that couple of positives. One is that it gives us more time to better understand these reports that we're getting, because we're talking about really big money. I think also it's important because it could give us a little more separation and definition as far as what this board does. I think oftentimes all these alphabet soup meetings blend together and we leave, and at least I feel like a lot of things just kind of jumbled in my mind. So I'd love to see staff kind of study that option moving forward at some point in time.
Thank you, Mayor Moore. Anybody else got a comment? Want to say something about what Mayor Moore's brought up?
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, amen. Let me tell you, as a chairman of this board, I leave here a lot of days and it just went right over my head. I don't understand it enough sometimes, and I think you're right on. You know, the more information I can absorb, one day I won't be able to sit here and ask the same questions Roger Anderson does. That's, you know, that's,
Y'all want to be like Roger.
we want to be like Roger. He can ask some good questions, and I'm afraid if I ask a question, it may be like, man, this guy's dumb, you know, but nobody's dumb. It's just, we're not been around as long as some people. And, we got to depend on staff all the time, and they do a great job. And the staff's probably looking at me sometimes when I talk to them like, man, how this guy get big chair, you know? But, anyway, that's a great point, great point.
Really, what, I understand exactly what Ken's saying, well, maybe this meeting starts a little early. We have a little more time. My fear is that if we add multiple days, we thin out the herd, because it's hard enough to make it.
Yeah.
We combine them for all of that reason, that would be a concern, but maybe we start this meeting, now for conversation, maybe it starts at 9:30, and you free yourself up. I don't know, we're just talking out loud.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one solution would be staff to come to the surrounding counties and give us an update on what's going on. And, I mean, I'm not saying they're not busy, but we're basically letting them represent us as a development district for these areas. And so if they went out to my friend over here, Mayor Ketterins County and Rutherford County, and gave him an update on what's going on and did a deep dive into your projects, what the status is. You wouldn't have to do it every month, but every other month, and just pick select counties. So we're prepped when we come to the meeting, because you're right, Mayor Callis, we can't sit here for 5 hours and understand what's going on. And I think there's a lot of, it's so compressed, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And we can't really do a deep dive into what our projects are and what's going on and how it all fits together. And that may be one solution, or there may be something else more creative, but it behooves us to really know what's going on. And I think a lot of times, and it's not GNRC, it's not the staff, it's just, we're here, we're trying to deal with a lot of information, it's very compressed, and we just run through it, and I don't always clearly understand everything. There's no doubt about it. So maybe one suggestion.
Let me say that, if, Michael and them would just send out a questionnaire about maybe what you think would solve what Mayor Ken's talking about, like a survey or something, and have some suggestions about what you think would work, other than maybe a longer meeting or more days or whatever, or you know, sometimes maybe just having a conference call on certain projects, and you know, because that's just a suggestion, okay?
Yes, sir. Staff would be happy to look into what you want out of these meetings, what you want out of in between these meetings, and then we can put together some scenarios that address not only Mayor, more suggestions, but some of the concerns that, you know, Mayor Callis, I know that's one, sort of the convenience issue is one that, you know, we've dealt with for 15 years since I've been here. I know Steve is very gracious to work with us on streamlining these days, but I think it is time to reevaluate how we're doing it, given how significant these issues are. And it's not just transportation. By the time we get to the GNRC meeting, we've exhausted ourselves. We can't talk about open space and economic development and water, wastewater utilities, and all the other things that are going on that we support you with at the local level. So we'll certainly do that research and then bring forth some options for the board, not just this board, but the other boards as well. One thing I would encourage you to do, if you don't have a strong relationship with your representative on the technical committee, that group meets the first Wednesday of the month. In preparation for these meetings, it's where your staff gets together with other staff counterparts across the region. I know some of you prep with your TCC member before this meeting. We're always happy to be out and about throughout the region. We often are, and we'll continue to do that. But we're prepping your staff the first week of the month in anticipation that there's good dialogue between your staff representative and the elected official that's at this table as well. So thank you for the suggestion, Mayor Moore. Thank you for the feedback, and Mr. Chair, we'll get on that.
Hey, I'm glad you brought that up about them CCC meetings, because I'm very guilty of that. And, I could learn a lot from the guy that comes and help me be more prepared for this. And I think, you know, it's a good route for everybody to take. Anybody else got any more comments from the
If I
board?
could just finish up with one final comment, and I apologize, Chairman, but I think it also might be, as we look at this, a greater opportunity for us to have greater interaction with our partners, rather than being such a compressed time. Or, I don't know, I think that's one of the challenges we have, is making sure that we're hearing our partners, and our partners are hearing us as we move forward.
Anyone else?
Y'all can come to the Clarksville and tell me tomorrow if you'd like to.
Can I get a?
Hey.
Yes, sir, you can. Mayor Moore, for sure.
Well, Derek, we're gonna miss you, Jim. Hey, anybody got anything else from the board?
I think maybe the task force might be able to help with this.
Yeah, I do too.
It's gonna be an extra
Yeah.
meeting.
And we got some good people on it too.
Some of these projects that might be what might help you.
Anybody else?
Just a reminder, we have the executive board meeting after the transportation policy board.
Want to remind you, when you leave, please leave these on the table. Some of us is guilty of packing them off. All right, I'll entertain one more motion.
Motion adjourned.
So moved.